Hi, I'm Stephen Hicks. I'm Executive Director of the Center for Ethics and Entrepreneurship here at Rockford College, and my two guests today spoke at Rockford College on themes of entrepreneurship and ethics. With me is Michael Strong, who's educated at Harvard and down the road at the University of Chicago. He's the author of a new book last year called Be the Solution, and the theme there is conscious capitalism and entrepreneurial solutions to major world problems and social problems. Our other guest is Magatte Wade, who's a serial entrepreneur originally from Senegal, Africa. Founded a business there, is quite successful, and is now engaged in a new entrepreneurial venture here in the United States. So Michael, I wanted to start with you. One of your provocative opening lines was an account of entrepreneurship as a kind of magic, as creating something out of nothing. Or what do you mean by that?
Well, Magatte and I went to Rwanda this summer, and Rwanda is all subsistence agriculture, meaning it's nothing but little tiny patchworks of people growing corn and potatoes and so forth. In 1800, the whole world was full of basically people doing subsistence agriculture. Whenever we walk around the world and we see airports and computers and buildings and chairs, all this stuff had to come from somewhere. And my point is that although science and technology made certain discoveries that contributed to all this stuff around us, when we walk around, we should be aware of the fact that were it not for entrepreneurs creating profitable businesses that marketed goods and services that people wanted, made from inventions and designs and so forth, we would all still be living at the level of subsistence agriculture. So we need to have some realization that without the entrepreneurs, we might have scientists in labs. If maybe the kings could have a few scientists in a lab, and we would have subsistence agriculture, but we would not have the life we have. The extraordinary life, and I think we should all bow down to the Industrial Revolution every day. This extraordinary life is entirely due to the fact that millions of entrepreneurs for the last 200 years have created millions of businesses that provided innovative goods and services month by month, year by year, and have created and are still creating the world we live in today.
Okay. The cultures that have become rich in the last 200 years, beyond the normal standing point for humans for most of human history, what were they doing differently that hadn't been done before? I mean, you mentioned the Industrial Revolution, but what are the components that are there?
No, great question, and there are controversies in this. Yeah. One aspect, there's certainly a legal part, and there's a cultural part, and an intellectual part, but one thing that has become increasingly clear is that the legal structure is crucial. In particular, you need secure and transferable property rights, you need rule of law, contract enforcement that's reliable and fair, and you need economic freedom, the freedom to create things. In my book, I talk about this as the entrepreneur's toolkit, where just as an artist can't paint if he or she doesn't have a canvas and paint, so too an entrepreneur can't create if they don't know what they own, if they can't exchange what they own with other entrepreneurs or other businesses, and finally produce things freely for the market. So economic freedom, property rights, rule of law, crucial. When you look at countries with economic freedom, every nation with economic freedom is wealthy, every nation without economic freedom is poor. In general, it's complicated, but in general, as countries increase economic freedom, at levels of economic freedom, they become wealthier. Hong Kong and Singapore are the two most economically free entities for the last 50 years. They've been the fastest growing entities. They went from approximately African levels of poverty in 1960 to now two of the wealthiest sovereign entities on earth. Hong Kong's not quite sovereign, but still higher GDP per capita than Britain. They're both former British colonies.
So if you look at the continuing problem areas of the world, the parts of the world that are still consistently poor, this then would indicate that the problem that needs to be dealt with is the economic freedom issue, primarily including a legal component?
Absolutely. Africa is the most overregulated region on earth. It is easier to open a legal business in Denmark than in any African country. It's easier to fire an employee in Denmark than in any African country. I just mentioned Denmark because a lot of anti-capitalists think of Scandinavia as socialist heaven. What they don't realize is that Scandinavia is more free market than the developing world. And that's why regions like Africa are poor. African entrepreneurs need to be liberated so that they can create legal businesses, create wealth and jobs, and thereby have Africa become as prosperous as the developed world is.
You mentioned one anecdote about about having documents notarized to make them legal if you're going to start a legal business. How expensive on average is that for an American entrepreneur compared to, I know you mentioned the Mexican entrepreneur?
No, that's a huge. Mexico has a problem. In general, Mexico is not nearly as free market as the U.S. One of the specific ways in which there are obstacles to legal business creation are the notary publics. In the U.S., most of us can get a document notarized for less than $10, often for free. And if you want to create a legal business and you need a notarized document, no big deal. We don't even think about it. In Mexico, notary publics charge between $500 to $1,000. Many business documents that would be required to create a legal business there, cost so much money that unless you're already an upper middle class or wealthy Mexican, you don't stand a chance of creating a legal business in Mexico. As a consequence, it's easier for a poor, uneducated Mexican to cross the border illegally into the U.S., create a legal business here, become wealthy, and go back to Mexico. They just don't have that opportunity in Mexico.